Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to this particular session. Today, in this session, we have Miss Lily Lau, who is a master trainer, coach, facilitator, as well as a speaker for culture dynamics. She has been interviewed by various medias, including newspapers and Leadernomics. Today's topic, she'll be sharing on building inclusive culture, the agility key to reboot in post-pandemic. Let's welcome Lily.
Hi, Janet. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for introducing me. Yes.
You're most welcome.
Yep.
Yeah. So I will leave it to you to carry on with the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janet.
Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Depending on what country you are, which time zone you are, I welcome you to my session. Yes, today I'm going to share with you another session on building an inclusive culture, the agility key to reboot, especially now in the pandemic. Right, so I will take you through into the next 45 minutes. And to do that, let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen? I assume you all can see my screen? Okay. This will be the topic that I'm sharing. And as what been said by the previous speaker, Liz Pellet, right? There have been so much changes, and definitely, if you agree with me, almost everything, well, it may not be everything, almost everything has changed due to the COVID, and it only happened in a short period of 3 months. Malaysia, where I am now, we experienced a lockdown from March 18. So now today we are on June 26, which is like, just a little bit above 3 months. And can you imagine how things have changed? It is so incremental. And this is something that, in history, it may not has happened so sharp before. So what happened in the past 3 months? There are companies that just ride on the wave, right? And because of the pandemic, they are the ones that just came in at the right time with the right product or the right services, and people just buy them because they need it. Can you imagine? And they are there now earning big money, and they are selling so well. And on the other hand, what's happening to some other industries? We have industries that have to close down immediately, right? And as a result, what happened? They were not ready, they were not prepared, and they are struggling. So 3 months down the line, as at now, what happened? In the newspaper, as you've been reading, some even have to declare bankrupt, some are closing shops, some are retrenching, some are doing many other things just to keep the survival. So this is the two extreme scenarios that has been happening in the last 3 months, to the organizations in different industries. So I'm going to share with you, taking the scene, right, that you are on the second one where you are not so prepared. So how, right? We need to reboot. You need to do something to move forward, to sustain your business. Even the companies who are doing well now, it doesn't mean that you're going to maintain, that kind of level of growth, even in post-pandemic. God knows, we don't know, right? There'll be another shift of something else, and right, if you are not prepared, you may not go through your next level of success, right? So when it comes to a situation like this, what would most companies do, right? I guarantee you, they cut costs, which that is the first thing they announced. They downsize staff, right? And you have been reading in the newspaper, the unemployment rate has been going up. People are registering for the welfare, for the benefits. They curb the non-essential expenses. Definitely, what they think is not necessary, it will be cut. Or they renegotiate with the contractors just to scale down the contracts and minimize wherever that they can save, they want to save. Or they postpone projects. Now, these are very, very common scenarios. And to me, those are the common decisions that management have to do. Now, my question here is, how can diversity and inclusion come in to help? Because that's my topic. Because D&I, now I'm going to use shortcut as D&I for diversity and inclusion, because D&I is considered something as non-essential, nice to have. Is it really nice to have or must to have? That would be the question that I'm posing to you, and I'd like you to think through, especially for the bosses and the management, where you have to manage companies and make critical decisions. Right. How can diversity and inclusion help to reboot? Now, this is something to consider. Before I can answer that question, we need to go through a little bit of the fundamentals to understand what is diversity and inclusion. Now, I'm not too sure which part of the country that you are from, because where I am, Malaysia, we are a country that is truly diverse. Our tagline for our tourism is Malaysia through the Asia, right? So among ourselves, we are multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religion, multi-language, all sorts. And we have been, together, studying together, work together, and eat together, although there are still differences among us. Now, most people do understand diversity, and it is quite easy to understand. How about inclusion? What do you understand about inclusion? Okay, now I shall answer this as I go along. Okay, in broad terms, diversity can be measured as long as there are differences among the groups. I'm talking about a group of people, and if you look at them, right, how different are they? What are the differences? Could be difference in age, different in sex, different in skin color, different in religion, different in languages, different in the food that they eat, all sorts. So all of us, we come together and work in a company together as a team, as a member of a company, right? Now, the question here is, all these are diversity because all of us are different. How about for a country that is monoculture? For example, you take Japan. Basically, Japan is a monoculture country. All the people there, they speak the same language, they eat almost the same food, religion almost the same. So if you look at differences, it is small in terms of that scale. Most of the people are of the same, what shall I say, of the same culture and orientation. So is there still diversity in such a group? My answer is yes. Yes, right? Sex is one. They are still different. I mean, there's still male and female, right? There's still people of different age coming in together and work together. Yes, on Tuesday, I talk about generation. In one company, you would have people as young as in the 20s up till the retirement age. So that itself is a diversity. And people of different generation do have different ways of thinking, different expectation, and how they want their workplace to be. That itself is a diversity. How about your professionalism? What sort of background do you have? That itself is also one form of diversity. Now, even though you are from the same country, in different parts of the same country, there are still some variation, if you agree with me. People who are from the north, do they eat exactly the same? For example, in Malaysia, nasi lemak. Nasi lemak is our standard food, favorite breakfast. The way that the nasi lemak is cooked for people in the north, is it exactly the same by the people in the south? There is some variation. Now, that itself is a diversity. So for me here is just to give you an understanding how diversity can be specified. And in the organization, you will have people of all kinds coming together. And if to bring you different works experiences, lifestyles, and culture. Now, if all this background is taken into consideration, they can be like a big pot of a pot of big ideas. And when you want to discuss on some new ideas, all the differences of the background by each of the people can contribute. So this is a plus point on how diversity can help in growing and in creating new things, especially now in post-pandemic. You need to do things differently so that you can thrive. So that's where how diversity can come in, and if it is unleashed, it can be very powerful. Okay, and let's move on to inclusion. Inclusion is the opposite of diversity. Diversity, we talk about differences, whereas inclusion, we talk about because we are different, how can we include, accept, or embrace one another despite the differences? That is, in short, what is the meaning of inclusion. Okay, it is like, I respect to be respected. I value other people so that other people can value me too. So that is about acceptance, right? So in the workplace, this inclusion is about understanding the needs of every individual and how can we maximize that so that the full potential can be achieved in order to help the company to achieve its goal, right? So if the inclusion culture can be created, that will be the most ideal situation in the post-pandemic. And I will explain why. Okay, now before I go into that, I need to go into the fundamentals to go through with you the definition of diversity. Okay, according to this definition, you don't have to read every single word. I will just quickly, briefly explain them. Okay, diversity consists of visible and non-visible differences. Now, visible is easy, right? It is about sex, age, background, race, disability. The non-visible is about personality, work style. You can't see it, but you feel it. And because of all these differences, the question here is, how do we harness the differences to create a productive environment which everybody feels valued and where their talents are fully utilized, and at the same time, the organizational goals are met? So in short, that is the definition of diversity. Right? Now, just now I talked about nasi lemak. This is my example to describe what D&I is. Now, nasi lemak is a favorite breakfast in Malaysia. And the picture that you see on the left, that is the standard, most basic nasi lemak. And the one that is on the right that has a piece of chicken, that is an expensive, or I call it the luxury version of the nasi lemak, right? Either way, they are still nasi lemak. And what is the ingredients that you need to get your nasi lemak? Number one, you must have the rice, most important. But this is not any ordinary white rice. It is cooked in coconut milk. There must be certain elements of the combination that you use coconut milk to get the fragrance for the rice. And then you need to have the sambal. The sambal is the chili paste. How, is the sambal being made? Now, that is very, very important. And the others would be like, hard-boiled egg, and then you have the cucumber, and then you have the peanuts, and then you have the fried anchovies. Now, these are the basic ingredients, yeah? You can have the chicken as the extra, right? Now, the question here is, all these components of the nasi lemak, you cannot eliminate any of them. Yeah, you may tell me, oh, Lily, I don't like cucumber. It's okay. you can just leave the cucumber aside, but definitely you will get the cucumber when you buy your nasi lemak, right? But the key question here is, the two most important element of the nasi lemak is your coconut, your rice, your santan rice, plus your sambal. And how do you eat them? You have to mix your sambal into the rice to eat it. You don't eat the rice as in plain rice and then you eat the sambal separately. In Malaysia, that's not the style to eat. You need to mix it. And when you mix these two elements, what happens? That's where the combination works so well, you get the best in the taste for your favorite nasi lemak. And you mix it with your hard-boiled egg and all that. That's like, wow, that's what a lot of us eat for that every day. Now, just to skip, sorry, okay. Sorry, so let me move on now. For me, I like to use nasi lemak as the example. Okay, now in the textbook, right, this is the stuff that you can get to explain what is diversity and what is inclusion, right? They use the example of salad. If you can see the picture for diversity, you still get 4 types of different salads, but all the salads are not intermixed. That itself is diversity, but they are not intermixed. Whereas the bowl of salad, which is on the right, all the vegetables and the fruits are all intermixed. So when you poke your fork into this bowl, you will get 2 or 3 pieces of vegetables of different kinds that come in together. So that itself is a mix. And of course, normally when you eat the salad, you need the dressing. So it comes together with the dressing, right? So in a simple way to explain what is diversity, it is the compliance or the complexion to describe the company, yeah? And then inclusion is the culture or the climate of the company. So definitely inclusion, diversity is into the inclusion, and inclusion is higher level that is needed to make it work. Okay, so in simple term, diversity is the mix, whereas inclusion is getting the mix to work well together. I hope you'll get that point. I repeat, diversity is the mix. Inclusion is getting the mix to work well together. So you think of your nasi lemak, okay? When you are served your plate of nasi lemak, you get the diversity. But when you eat it and you say that your nasi lemak is tasty, is when you mix it well and eat it together. So that would be diversity. Now, what happened in the organizations here today is that there are companies that are diverse but not inclusive. Or we have companies that are inclusive but not diverse. The question here is that we need both. We need the combination of both in today's challenging condition to make it successful, right? Now, to understand the concept of D&I better, I will quickly run you through a little bit of the fundamentals. We need to understand the conscious and unconscious mind, because when you talk about diversity and inclusion, it is about understanding differences and how do we interact the differences together. Okay, now as shown by the previous speaker, she also shown the iceberg, right? So as what on the top is what you can see, and at the bottom is what we cannot see, and it consists the bigger chunk of the ice, of the piece of ice, and that in fact is actually more important. So in culture, if you want to talk about culture, it is always about the bottom part of the sea. What is it that you cannot see and yet you feel it and yet you know that is happening. So that part of it is the culture, and it is through the unconscious mind. It is about the feeling. It is about our way of thinking. Now, we can think about many things, but a lot of times we may not verbalize it. Once you verbalize, it becomes conscious. But if you do not verbalize, it remains in you, and that's where the unconscious. And you evaluate and you assume or you make judgment. All this is the unconscious part. Okay, let me show you this picture. Now, she's a nurse, right? How do you know that she's a nurse? Her uniform, her white color uniform. Yeah, and I think to you, right, you'll be wondering what's so special about this. Yeah. Now, have you ever thought that a nurse can be a guy? Right? Because when we hear the word nurse, we always imagine or think that it is a woman. You are right. There's nothing wrong. However, it can also be a guy, right? So this has the unconscious element inside us. Yeah. Let me show you another example. Now, do you find this picture interesting? The one that is on your right, what do you see? It is a housewife at home, at work, doing laundry, taking care of the daughter. Right now, this is common, nothing unusual about it. How about the guy who is on the left? What is he doing? He's wearing an apron and he is ironing, right? He's ironing, and on his other hand, he's holding, I'm not sure what he's holding, looks like he's also cleaning. Okay, there is this word called house husband. Now, house husband is a word that's not new. Depending on what society and what culture that you are coming from, this word may not be well acknowledged in positive way. Why? It is because of the unconscious bias. Right now, there are house husbands truly in my culture, but they are not recognized, neither do they want to be recognized. Right? But if you're a housewife, it's okay. The husband will introduce, oh, this is my wife who is a housewife. But I don't think, people will introduce their husband the other way around. Right? Now, this is, other than being the culture, as in the ethnic culture element, right? There is also the unconscious bias. People have a biasness if you introduce yourself as the house husband, which may be negative in this sense. That's why it is not well received. Right now, I'm just going through with you very briefly just to share with you what is unconscious bias, right? So in short, these thoughts do come to us, and this kind of thoughts is all about your upbringing, what you think is wrong or what you think is not wrong, wrong or right, and you make judgment based on your experience, based on your belief, based on your culture upbringing, right? Now, it can be positive or negative for the judgment that you make. Here, whatever that you judge, right, from your perspective is always correct. Okay, so we don't want to go into argument on that, but this is the element of how things are in your common sense. Okay, so this is what we call the unconscious bias. Now, the key thing here is unconsciously, when you are at the workplace, you make unconscious judgment towards people, right? Especially when you are in a diverse culture. And unconsciously, we also create biasness, whether good or bad. Now, biasness need not always be bad. It can also be good. But the question here is, whatever judgment that you make, it is all from your culture. And you bring this culture to the company when you go to work, right? Now, every one of us, especially if we talk about diversity, every one of us got different ways of thinking, different ideas of what is correct, what it should be done or how it should be done. Now, there are challenges when this group of people come together, which I shall explain, right? The question here is, unconscious bias cannot be stopped. Even after my, session today, and I'm telling you, you could be, making unconscious judgment about people. The question here is, that is the natural way how we, think what is right or wrong. However, after hearing me, what you should do is to create the awareness in yourself. Have you been, lopsided towards one side, or should you have a more balanced view before you make that judgment? Now, that was the fundamental, a little bit of understanding the basic before we can apply diversity and inclusion. So the question here is, let me go back to our topic here. Diversity and inclusion will be a critical differentiator to weather COVID-19 storm. I'm talking about how can you reboot, how can you go into your next phase of success, coming out, going back to work, and recreating your businesses. Right, in a normal situation, what kind of culture do you want? In most situations, especially now, right? Before COVID-19, for those cultures who were not ready, that's where they suffer. And a culture that can sustain will be a culture that is resilient, strong, a culture that is agile. Agile means you have the capability to take fast action at the right time to do the right thing. And you have leaders, capable leaders who can handle crisis. And you need leaders who are authentic, where the employees feel that they are part of it. Wouldn't that will be the culture that everybody wants, right? However, what's happening to us now? We are full of challenges. People are working from home. HR have a tough time organizing, scheduling, making tables, timetables for their staff to work. And bosses probably have tough time, don't know who is working from where or who is coming to work or not, or working from home, that kind of thing. These are the challenges that we are facing. And what else? Your workforce is cut. Very, very limited now. So with the existing pool of talent that you have, are you maximizing? Are you maximizing your talent management? Are your employees engaged enough to help you to do what you want to do? And are you only hiring the best? How about hiring people from diverse backgrounds as well? And if you have the large pool of diversity, this is where the people can come in and contribute based on different perspectives that they have. And the next question is your leadership style. What we need is inclusiveness, which is something that you may need to think about. Now, what is inclusive leadership? As what I have described, right? What is diversity and inclusion? In simple terms is, you respect to be respected, you value to be valued. Now, that is very simple. But to do it and to convert that into a culture, into a leadership management, it may not come so easily. Nevertheless, it has been researched that companies with inclusive leaders are 17% more high performing, 20% more make high quality decisions, and 29% more report behaving collaboratively. Now, that is a very important word. And lastly, if you look at this, it is 10% improvement in perception of inclusion increases work attendance by almost 1 day a year per employee. And that helps to reduce cost of absenteeism. Now, wouldn't that great if you have inclusiveness in your culture and leadership? Yeah. So what is it like to be an inclusive leader? You require someone who has cultural intelligence. You require someone who understands the unconscious bias. Now, this unconscious bias does not mean only the leader. It is about the whole team, the whole company, everybody. They should be aware. It is about the capability to capitalize on the assets of diversity and inclusion for high team performance. You want to respect to be respected, value to be valued, with humility. The key word here is with humility. And there is a need to balance between empathy, good listening skills, and to be resilient in order to drive your performance. And lastly, you are someone that has the capability to connect internally and externally. Internally is with your team, and externally is with your clients or vendors or whoever. Right. Now, this is a study done that shows why diversity is the key, is the way moving forward. Right? Now, if you only have homogeneous group of staff working together, yes, they are good, they are capable, they are competent, based on study, because everybody is the same. Right? The level of success, where they can go, there is a limit. After a certain level, it's like people run out of ideas. There is no more new way, they can't think of anything out because everybody have the same background. Whereas for diverse, now you have to be a little bit careful here. Based on this study, there are two possible outcomes. And both outcomes are very, very different, right? It's either you fail very drastically or you succeed exceedingly, right? Now, if you look at the graph, the one that is on the left side, right, where the group failed, it is because the leaders ignore cultural differences. And in this scenario, there is no leveraging on each other's based on differences, and there is no embracing of each other, to include each other, to understand one another. And here is where culture becomes an obstacle, and that's why they fail. Whereas on the other extreme, they super exceed, they super perform, right? Because they acknowledge the differences. From differences, they embrace and they understand how to work together, and they make culture to be an asset. So this is where, moving forward, culture, building an inclusive culture can be the key to help you to reboot, especially post-pandemic. Right, I'm coming to the last of my PowerPoint now. So to build an inclusive culture, what can it help you to do? It promotes innovation. Why? Because you have people of diverse background. It promotes ideas on how to reinvent your businesses to thrive in this current uncertainties. It promotes new ways of working, new products, new services, new models, whatever. Okay? And it promotes trust, because it is not easy to work based on differences. And once you have that, definitely you have the team synergy. Okay, I hope with that it has given you a background on what you can do to recreate your organizational culture so that you will thrive in the post-pandemic. Right, this is a little bit about me, a little bit of my background. What I do here is that I help people and companies how to achieve their successes through differences. Yeah, and especially in culture, in creating new cultures, in embracing diversity. And 2 days ago, I spoke about generations. That is also one form of diversity. And I also use directive communication in my training. That is through understanding. For example, in colored brain, it is through understanding of the different genetics of our brain, and that make us having different work style in our work. And that is one form of diversity. Yeah. And if you require a little bit more about my information, feel free to write to me or WhatsApp me, and I shall be available to reply you. Okay, that's it. Thank you. And I shall take questions.
Hi, Lily. It was a very nice presentation, and Siva said it's well-paced, nice, and clear delivery. There are a couple of questions that came in, so I'm going to tackle them one at a time. We have Kenny here who asks, how can unconscious bias overcome to improve D&I?
Wow, okay, that's a very good question. Now, I did talk about what is unconscious bias, and the key thing here is because unconscious bias can create lots of conflict if we do not understand, right? And in a situation where conflict is created, truly, nobody is really wrong because everybody is entitled to their way of thinking, right? And all this thinking could come from, the value system that they have, the belief system that they have. And that's why they wanted to do it in certain ways. So if we, have this understanding, instead of arguing, we say, let's talk, let's understand, from I understand your perspective, you understand my perspective, right? And come to a landing, come to a some form of understanding between both parties. And once if that is overcome, that's where you are already embracing diversity and inclusion.
Right. Yeah? I think the key is awareness in terms of the unconscious biasness in order to at least understand and overcome it. We have another question that is from Li Wen Feng, who's asking about how non-visible diversity can help to improve D&I.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did talk about visible and non-visible. Now, visible is easy. Everybody knows, right? You can see the difference of the hair, difference of the skin color, age, sex. That is visible, right? The non-visible part, especially at the workplace. Example, work style. If you agree with me, everybody has different work style. Yeah, and in the Asian context, a normal standard Asian context which is hierarchical. They always say that boss is always right. Yeah, and what happens if I'm the staff working for a boss? I have to follow the boss style. Yeah, and I learn his style. Correct, I'm learning. But is that a true diversity and inclusion in a sense? If the boss has the understanding of D&I, the boss should also understand from my perspective. Yeah, so this is where understanding of the colored brain, the genetics of how our brain process information, does help in leveraging and making the D&I even better, right? Because I won't go into the techniques. I mean, a lot of explanation. What I meant is, all of us, we think very differently, right? And if we take time to understand the differences in the work style, that can help to understand and work together better. Yep.
Yes, well said. I think it's different people have different ways of doing things. So the key is not how you achieve something, it's more of whether you achieve something in the end. There's another question that came in from Wailing Yong, She's asking, if we have a superior who is not aware that he's not practicing D&I, how can we as staff bring the awareness to him?
Ooh, wow. Okay. Wai Ling, thank you for this question. I think we have to create the awareness is in him. Yeah, you may have to bring him, sign him up for some D&I talks, create the understanding of unconscious bias. I think that's the only way. He cannot practice because he's not aware. So creating awareness is the first step, right? In most things, right? From awareness, then only we can. From awareness is the first step. The last step is a skill, right? So that is a process that, as a human, that's how we learn, right? Without having the awareness, he can't do anything because that's what he doesn't know that he doesn't know.
Yes, and I think that's what Lily does quite a bit in terms of the workshops. Only through workshops and addressing different situations in case studies would people become a little bit more aware that there are different styles for each other. So I believe if you would like to, you can actually contact Lily and find out a bit more. There's another question here from Mahesh Jasingha. How will you manage the national culture diversity, especially for a multinational company?
Okay, Mahesh, a very, very good question. Now, I'm assuming, right, when you say national culture, I don't know what country that you are from. A multinational, in fact, those multinational that I know which are in Malaysia, although they do have a diverse culture within that, and they do understand diversity to a certain level, but if you go deeper down to the more bottom level, it is more the local culture that are in place. The diverse culture could be more at a higher level. Yeah, so in such a situation, it is a mix. But for the lower level, unless you create the awareness, you send them for training, right? For them to understand the D&I factor, it requires a long process. Some of them may unknowingly pick it up, but some may never pick it up because if they believe that, my culture, that is the right way to do, right? At the international level, well, they know the differences, but they may not say that I want to do it to a certain extent, yeah? So it all depends on what level of people that you're dealing with, because I'm reciting the situation of multinationals that I have been interacting with in Malaysia, right? Even it is multinational by name, right? But when I deal with some people, the way that they practice is still pretty local. Yeah, so I hope I have answered your question. Yeah.
So thanks, Lily, for sharing. So I'm just going to bring up some of the people who you shared. Liwen answered and say great sharing. And Wai Ling said, thank you, Lily, for having this particular session. So time is really passing pretty fast. We are already almost 1 minute to 2:45 itself. Thank you so much, Lily, for an insightful sharing on diversity and inclusion and why it is critical for rebooting and building a inclusive culture. Thank you so much for your sharing.
Thank you, Janet.